Sometimes I wonder if you're out there listening to this, or if these are just gifts that I'm throwing out there to the wind. Either way, they're gifts freely given. And tonight, that gift is A Wizard of Earthsea, Chapter 6, Part 2. The last sentence. He went to the sea house of Serd, where travelers and merchants ate together of good fare provided by the township, and might sleep in the long rafted hall. Such is the hospitality of the thriving islands of the inmost sea. He saved a bit of meat from his dinner, and by the fire pit afterwards he coaxed the otok out of the fold of his hood, where it had cowered all that day, and tried to get it to eat, petting it and whispering to it, "Hoeg, hoeg, little one, silent one." But it would not eat, and crept in his pocket to hide. By that, by his own dull uncertainty, by the very look of the darkness in the corners of the great room, he knew that the shadow was not far from him. No one in this place knew him. They were travelers from other isles who had not heard the song of the sparrowhawk. None spoke to him. None spoke to him. He chose a pallet at last and lay down, but all night long he lay with open eyes, there in the raftered hall among the sleep of strangers. All night he tried to choose his way, to plan where he should go, what he should do, but each choice, each plan was blocked by a foreboding of doom. Across each way he might go lay the shadow. Only Roke was clear of it, and to Roke he could not go, forbidden by the high and woven ancient spells that kept the perilous island safe. That the Roke wind had risen against him was proof that that the Roke wind had risen against him was proof the thing that hunted him must be very close upon him now. That thing was bodiless, blind to sunlight, a creature of a lightless, placeless, timeless realm. It must grope after him through the days and across the seas of the sunlit world, and could take visible shape only in dream and darkness. It had as yet no substance or being that the light of the sun would shine on. And so it is sung in the deed of Hode: daybreak makes all earth and sea, from shadow brings forth form, driving dream to the dark kingdom. But if once the shadow, unquote, but if once the shadow caught up with Jed, it could draw his power out of him, and take from him the very weight and warmth and life of his body and the will that moved him. That was the doom he saw laying ahead on every road, and he knew that he might be tricked toward that doom, for the shadow, growing stronger always as it was nearer him, might even now have strength enough to put evil powers or evil men to its own use, showing him false portents, or speaking with the stranger's voice. For all he knew, in one of these men who slept in this corner or that of the raftered hall of the sea house tonight, the dark thing lurked, finding a foothold in a dark soul, and there waiting and watching Jed, and feeding even now on his weakness, on his uncertainty, on his fear. It was past bearing. He must trust to chance and run wherever chance took him. At the first cold hint of dawn, he got up and went in haste under the dimming stars down to the wharfs of Serd, resolved only to take the first ship outward bound that would have him. a galley was loading turbot oil. A galley was loading turbot oil. She was to sail at sunrise, bound to Havnor the Great Port. Jed asked passage of her master. A wizard staff is passport and payment on most ships. They took him on aboard willingly, and within that hour the ship set forth. Jed's spirits lifted with the first lifting of the 40 long oars and the drum beats that kept the stroke. Made a brave music to him. And yet he did not know what he would do in Havnor, or where he would run from there. Northward was as good as any direction. He was a northerner himself. Maybe he would find some ship to take him on to Gaunt from Havnor, and he might see Ogayan again. Or he might find some ship going far out into the reaches, so far the shadow would lose him and give up the hunt. Beyond such vague ideas as these, there was no plan in his head, and he saw no one course that he must follow. Only he must run. Those 40 oars carried the ship over 150 miles of wintry sea before sunset of the second day out from Serd. They came into port at Ormi, on the east shore of the great land Husk. For these trade galleys of the inmost sea keep to the coasts and lie overnight in harbor wherever they can. Jed went ashore, for it was still daylight, and he roamed the steep streets of the port town, aimless and brooding. Ormi is an old town, built heavily of stone and brick, walled against the lawless lords of the interior of Husk Island. The warehouses on the docks are like forts, and the merchants' houses are towered and fortified. Yet to Jed, wandering through the streets, those ponderous mansions seemed like veils, beyond which lay an empty dark, and people who passed him, intent on their business, seemed not real men, but voiceless shadows of men. As the sun set, he came down to the wharfs again, and even there, in the broad red light and the wind of the day's end, sea and land alike to him seemed dim and silent. "Where are you bound, Lord Wizard?" So one hailed him suddenly from behind. Turning, he saw a man dressed in gray, who carried a staff of heavy wood that was not a wizard's staff. The stranger's face was hidden by his hood from the red light, but Jed felt the unseen eyes on him. Starting back, he raised his own yew staff between him and the stranger. Mildly, the man asked, "What do you fear? What follows behind me?" "So, but I'm not your shadow." Jed stood silent. He knew that indeed this man, whatever he was not what he feared. He was no shadow or ghost or Gebeth creature. Amidst the dry silence and shadowiness that had come over the world, he even kept a voice and some solidity. He put back his hood now, the stranger. He had a different, seamed, bald head and a lined face. Though age had not sounded in his voice, he looked to be an old man. "I do not know you," said the man in gray. "Yet I think perhaps we do not meet by chance. I heard a tale once of a young man, a scarred man, who won through darkness to great dominion, even to kingship. I do not know if that is your tale, but I will tell you this. Go to the court of Terranon if you need a sword to fight shadows with. A staff of yew wood will not serve your need." Hope and mistrust struggled in Jed's mind as he listened. A wizardly man soon learns that few indeed of his meetings are chance ones, be they for good or for ill. In what land is the court of Terranon? In Osskill. At the sound of that name, Jed saw for a moment, by a trick of memory, a black raven on green grass, who looked up at him sidelong with an eye like a polished stone, and spoke, but the words were forgotten. That land has something of a dark name, Jed said, looking ever at the man in gray, trying to judge what kind of a man he was. There was a manner about him that hinted of the sorcerer, even of the wizard, and yet boldly as he spoke to Jed, there was a queer, beaten look about him, the look almost of a sick man, or a prisoner, or a slave. "You are from Roke," he answered. "The wizards of Roke give a dark name to wizardries other than their own. What man are you?" I'll leave it there. Go with peace and joy and the gift of a kind wish for tomorrow. I'll see you in my dreams, River.